Yes, that is a really fun way to practice those greater than, less than, equal to skills, because the other way we often do it is through a worksheet, which just already kids are going to think boring.
There are actually a wide range of benefits for using Playdough. So let's just think cognitive development. So that's the hands-on learning, the problem solving, memory and retention. Playdough is going to help with that. It's going to help with your fine motor skills, plus that hand-eye coordination, your dexterity and your strength. Funnily enough, I probably like Playdough for this now as an adult, is the social emotional development.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education. Whether you're in your first few years or well into your teaching career, we are here to inspire, support, and empower you with bite-sized tips, simple strategies, and the motivation to lead an education revolution, one classroom at a time.
We're Ashley and Alicia from Rainbow Sky Creations, two Aussie teachers who love all things teaching and learning. We are here to help you thrive as you work toward making an impact in your students' lives while loving your life as a teacher.
We are here to help you bring joy, simplicity, and creativity into your classroom on the daily, because
there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.
Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we record this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Well, hello. You're listening to Rainbow Skies for Teachers. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Alicia. We're so glad you're here.
We really are glad you're here. Today is a little bit of a left of centre kind of episode because we're going to be talking about Playdough, but not for kindergarten and year one because, there's millions of ideas out there for those grades. We're going to focus on activities you can do with grades 3 to 6 to use Playdough in your math lessons.
Yeah, I can't promise you, though, that a child in your class won't try and taste the Playdough. I feel like there's some strange little sensory need where kids are like, it smells interesting. Is it going to taste interesting?
Especially because they like salty. If you like salty flavours, you're going to quite like Playdough.
Can you tell I'm in the parenting world of little children still, that my first go-to thought is eat the Playdough, try the Playdough.
Yes, you can definitely tell. My mum's a teacher, and we were talking about kids that eat blue tack the other day. And my husband was like, his jaw was on the ground. And he said, what? They eat blue tack? And we just went simultaneously, oh, yes.
I feel like our OT listeners or anyone who has a bit of an OT, occupational therapist training would be like, oh my, yeah, that's so beneficial. And the oral, all those words. But yeah.
We'll leave all of that aside for another episode. We might need to get an OT in. But today we're just going to talk about Playdough. Before we do, though, I have my most favourite Playdough recipe. If you've been listening for a while or if you've been following us along on the socials, Alicia and I, we're big Thermomix gal.
Yeah.
I convinced Alicia to buy one of these very expensive machines. And have you ever looked back?
No. Look, if you're even going to have a child, planning to have children, just get one. Or if you've got a husband who likes to follow recipes to the T but doesn't love cooking, but they will follow a formula, get one. Or if that's just you, get one. It's a worthy investment.
They are a great investment. That's a side note. The recipe that I love to make Playdough the most is a Thermomix recipe. It's from a lady called the Organised Housewife, and she is a fellow Australian. I saw her once in real life on the Gold Coast.
I recall you messaging me.
Yes, I was very excited. I was a little starstruck. I was too excited. I was too starstruck to stop her and say, hello, I use your Playdough recipe. Anyway, we'll link that in the show notes. So if you want to make Playdough at home, there is a Thermomix recipe, and then there's one if you don't have a Thermomix. But this Playdough is the bomb. Okay, let's dive into Playdough activities you can do with your students, your older students. But first, before we do that, Alicia, what are the benefits of Playdough? Why are we talking about this?
I'm so glad you've asked. There are actually a wide range of benefits for using Playdough. So let's just think cognitive development. So that's the hands-on learning, the problem solving, memory and retention. Playdough is going to help with that. It's going to help with your fine motor skills, plus that hand-eye coordination, your dexterity and your strength. Funnily enough, I probably like Playdough for this now as an adult, is the social emotional development. So including stress relief, self-expression. If you've got those students who do like to use the sensory manipulation, they're going to really love this. Other thing is the academic benefits. What?
I know.
So one, it's high engagement. Like you see Play-Doh. I'm going to say if you're bringing out Play-Doh to a bunch of year 5 students and they haven't seen Play-Doh for years or recently, do not go straight into your lesson. Just give them the Play-Doh and let them play. Give them 10 minutes of free play time. But the academic benefits, you got that high engagement, the concept visualization, you know, how we talk about the concrete, Play-Doh is going to help here. And it is a differentiation tool. In essence, it is a teaching tool that you can use. There's 2 more. Do you want to tell us what they are, Ash?
Yes, you've got benefits with creative and critical thinking. So, of course, your kids are using their imagination. They're using innovation when they're using Play-Doh and playing with Play-Doh as a learning tool. And finally, multisensory learning, which is probably the most obvious one, but they're engaging with multiple senses, maybe even including taste, like Alicia mentioned.
Yes. I would have been that kid. I'm sure of it.
So Play-Doh is really great, like the back end of it, why we should use it and why it will benefit your older students too. But let's talk about some actual activities that you can do in your grade 3 to 6 classroom.
Yes. So thinking kids need to brush up on their number skills. So you could use the Play-Doh to become the symbol that's needed. So thinking of comparing numbers, you've got your greater than, your less than, your equal. So you could have a bunch of different numbers or use cards, dice to be a number generator, and you get the students to use the Play-Doh to create their equations, right? 345,000 is bigger than, you pick a number.
Yes, that is a really fun way to practice those greater than, less than, equal to skills, because the other way we often do it is through a worksheet, which just already kids are going to think boring. So they can create those symbols, they're manipulating them. You could do it with anything though. You could do it with their multiplication, their division, addition, subtraction, any sort of number sentence. They manipulate the Play-Doh into those symbols.
And you could have it where you've got a little small group and everybody makes their own equation and then everyone gets up and moves and they have to solve what the other person has done. So you can make it interactive. You can make it a bit fun. And what I love is when you give the students a scaffolding, you've given them a basic foundation, you've got those creative kids who come up with a really cool idea. And before you know it, everybody in the class is loving this cool idea and you've made a whole new lesson. So be open to the students leading the charge on how this activity, say we're comparing numbers, could evolve.
Absolutely. And if you need something concrete as a teacher, if they've understood it, get them to take a photo of what they've done. Email it to you.
Yeah. Airdrop that baby.
Yes. Okay, our second idea is creating arrays. Now, when we were first talking about Play-Doh many, many years ago, we were talking about creating arrays with different shapes. You know how you can roll out the Play-Doh and get the Play-Doh cutters and create shapes, which is a fun way to create arrays. But then I saw this fabulous idea, probably on TikTok, let's be honest. That's probably where I get all my fabulous ideas these days. And it's just a quicker way of creating arrays. So you roll out your Play-Doh and then just with your finger, you're creating little divots in the Play-Doh to create your array. And then the kids can label it. It's like a pancake array. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of buying plastic poppers, your Play-Doh becomes your popper. And then they just mush it out and reset.
Yes. Yeah. So a really good way. And also that becomes like a problem-solving tool as well.
I like it. So use your Play-Doh for teaching students arrays when it comes to multiplication and division. And then you're going to have these superstars who totally gets, especially how multiplication and division works because they got this concrete understanding. Boom, sorted.
Okay, the next one is for area and perimeter. We don't just like to give you the basic ideas here. We are thinking outside the square, literally.
Yeah. But I love, like, I've got a 3 and 4 year old at home and my kids will get the Play-Doh out and they're like, Mom, can you make me the longest snake or worm? And just that rolling out the Play-Doh and seeing how skinny you can make it before it breaks. But it's a great way of students to roll out different lengths of Play-Doh. They can use a cutting tool, their rulers, whatever it might be, to chop it into like equal lengths or varying lengths and make some really cool shapes. Like we talk so much about regular shapes, but they can really branch out on looking at irregular pentagons, irregular octagons, and get students calculating the lengths, the area, the perimeter of higher valued numbers, which is perfect for a grade 3 to 6 students.
Yeah. If you teach grade 1 or 2 and you're listening to this, they create their worms and just measure the lengths of the worms, which is another great measuring activity. But why not get your kids to create 2D shapes, irregular or regular, and start to calculate the area, the perimeter of those shapes?
And look, you can even hit on 3D shapes. And you know how the whole like getting toothpicks and marshmallows, you could test out how does it work using little blobs of Play-Doh. Does it stick as well as baby marshmallows to make your 3D objects? So go with the flow.
Exactly. The world is your oyster. Okay, the next one is a number line. And we often share number lines with younger students. But remember, number lines can be really beneficial for older students too. In particular, placing fractions or decimals along a number line, or even negative numbers along a number line. So we love it to actually provide our students that are a little bit more competent with different fraction cards and decimal cards that match, and then they can place those on the number line. But again, to differentiate, you could just have kids placing fractions on the number line or decimals on the number line, creating a pancake and cutting that pancake up to create the fraction so they can actually physically see what a quarter looks like and compare it to a half. That's another way you could use the Play-Doh in order to create these fraction and decimal number lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And others might say number line, but you could also look at it just even as a number path if you're not wanting to be so specifically in that location of where exactly that number should be. But it allows for students to look at the value of numbers, look how numbers can be represented. And you could then have, like we were talking before, with get the students, they might be 4 working in this group. They set up a number path and some question marks on what do you think it might be? And they all swap and they have to try and work out what number would fit in there with what my peer has left me. So it allows for peer teaching, peer mentoring, peer discussion, explaining their thinking. There's so many layers to it. You might look and go, it's quite simplistic, but you can really layer it to be more complex and more cognitive function going up there.
As you were talking too, that's quite an open-ended sort of task where you're saying to them, create this number line and then label it, or this number path, and then label it and leave out spaces. That's great. I could just imagine your 5s and 6s really getting into that.
And you got the ones who are like, I'm going to make it so hard. Like, how can I make it the hardest it can be? And that in itself is a challenge, actually having to create a maths problem. Don't we all know that as the teachers? I've got to make a maths test. Whoa, where do I get these questions from?
Yeah, making it solvable, like it needs to actually work. Another skill.
Absolutely. Our next one is measuring angles. I think angles is one of those activities or concepts that you have to teach that you forget about and go, oops, forgot to do angles. Let me just pull that out of the archives. And I feel there are a variety of activities you can do to teach angles that you do use real life objects and get it out there looking in the real world. And you can do that with Play-Doh as well, like rolling out, making different angles. So making 2 straight lines and them having to make angles. So looking at obtuse, obtuse, straight angles. You can even touch also on those reflex angles. And getting students then, obviously, depending on their level, getting at the protractor, measuring it. We have a fun little activity called measuring your name with a right angles muncher. And you could use that same muncher. We'll link that lesson in the show notes. But you can use the same concept of the right angle muncher, definitely for year 3 students to be able to identify, oh, it's inside the mouth, so it is acute. Or if it goes outside the mouth and I can't see the other line, oh, it must be obtuse. And if I can see both the lines right on the open mouth, it's a right angle. So there are really fun ways on how to use Play-Doh measuring angles.
Yeah, those right angle munchers, just as a side note, are so cute. We have teachers all the time commenting on that lesson, saying how much they love it. So yes, it will be linked in the show notes. All right. Next activity is probably more related to our older students. So we're thinking more grade 6, but you could actually use Play-Doh for order of operations. So give your students some digit cards and then get them to create the symbols with the Play-Doh. So they might create brackets. They might create a multiplication sign, an addition sign, a negative sign to put in front of the number. So it's like -8 or -7. And then they can go and solve it. It's a really fun way too of experimenting and investigating that if you move these things around, if you move the brackets around, if you move around some of the different symbols, what a difference it makes to the actual algorithm.
Yeah, imagine you've got this symbol and these numbers. Can you make the highest value? You've got this symbol and these numbers. Can you make the lowest value? And you could get the students to compare what values they got by manipulating those numbers around.
Yeah, absolutely. So that one's a really good one, especially I know I've taught year 6 on casual days and I've gone in and they want to be active. They want to be using their hands. And this is a really great way for them to be able to do that, but still work on some of those skills that we need them to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, our next one is a measurement one, working on time. A little bit of fun. Make yourself a little minute hand, an hour hand, and get students to use an analog clock to generate the time. They flip over some digital cards and they have to make it on the analog clock. And you're really looking at where those minute and hour hands are. It's not just sitting on the 5 or sitting on the 12 if it's supposed to be like 4:45. So it's a fun one.
It is a great one. So if you're teaching younger grades, obviously you'll be doing basic time. But if you're teaching older grades, maybe they're solving questions with elapsed time and they're showing that on their clock with their Play-Doh hands.
And look, I guarantee you're going to have kids who are like, I'm going to make the digital time in Play-Doh too.
You know what? That my mind didn't even go there, but I'm not surprised that yours did.
Yeah, that would be me just going, how can I utilize as much Play-Doh? And then you've got that kid who's collected all the Play-Doh because they've just made all the numbers and the other kids are going, I need my Play-Doh back.
I suppose we need to talk about mixing of Play-Doh too if we're talking about Play-Doh in this episode.
Oh, look, I think you just got to embrace brown. I think that's the end conclusion.
Yeah, or give everyone, if you're going to make it at home, give everyone the same colour. You
Yeah.
just got the same colour Play-Doh.
I could just imagine some like Montessori kids going, but where's my lavender smelling Play-Doh? And I really like the one with sandalwood. Or not to diss Montessori.
I do like to put a little bit of essential oils in my Play-Doh, and you're probably looking at me going, I'm not surprised with that at all.
I do like it too, like the smell, I must admit. And then I think it keeps them engaged longer. Look, there's another sensory element to it, but
Absolutely.
look, obviously we didn't realize how much we could talk about Play-Doh in this episode.
I know. We've got one final idea to share too, and that is probability experiments. So conducting simple probability experiments using Play-Doh, like in different colours, if it's not all brown by this point, and recording the outcomes of these little investigations that you're doing. The students could then record their answers on a graph. Lots of different ways to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You got some yellow Play-Doh, blue Play-Doh, green Play-Doh. You roll up 5 of each colour, pop it in a bag and see what happens after 10 times they take it out and they've recorded their results. And then you can get them to predict what would happen next. And yeah, why not make a graph with the Play-Doh? I love that. It's great.
Yeah, why not? Okay, so let's recap. We said at the very beginning why Play-Doh is important and how it can really help with your learning. And then we shared 8 ideas, which were?
We had comparing numbers, creating arrays, area and perimeter, number lines, make a number line or a number path, measuring angles, order of operations, who you realize I could talk so much about working on time, and probability experiments / chuck in some graphing there too.
Yeah, amazing. It's a really interactive approach to learning that really supports the needs of our students in our classroom. And it's a great way to differentiate and really cater for all of those different needs. So we would highly recommend it. If you use any of these ideas, let us know.
Yes. And if you're wondering, good gosh, Alicia and Ashley, I have no idea how to start using these sorts of materials in the classroom. We actually have a free e-guide of 6 ways to create maths lessons students love. And we talk about how you can use hands-on manipulative activities just like this. So we'll link that in the show notes and you can get that free guide if you want a bit of guidance to zhuzh up your maths lessons.
Yes, we love a bit of zhuzh and we love a bit of maths.
Yep.
Okay, let's give it a wrap next. I fear we're becoming a little silly. So we'll be back next week. Of course, every Monday, a new episode drops. There are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable.